Hello and welcome to the Higher Vibe. I'm your host, Jean Roorda. We're having conversations with psychic friends. And today I have with me Brandon Wilcox. He is a spiritual teacher, a clairvoyant reader, and a somatic healer. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yay, thanks for joining me. I am curious right away when you shared with me that you're a somatic healer. I'm curious what that means to you and how that looks for people. How do they experience somatic healing when you work with people?
Yeah, it's a great place to start. I'll take it back even one step further and then I'll go
Okay.
into the somatics because most people they know me as a reader and
Yes.
they come to me to get an answer. Maybe they're stuck somewhere in their life, they have a big question. And through readings, we can kind of see the patterns that they've been stuck in through their life, the energy of what's going on, all of those sort of things. And so people will then really quickly be aware of like, oh, okay, I'm trying to create this relationship or I'm trying to create this next step in my career or I have this health issue, right? And so then it's like, okay, what do we do after the reading? What do we do after we've got all that great insight? We have this new direction. Some people, they want to make a shift, right? They want to
Yeah.
change a pattern that's within them, or they want to heal a symptom, an illness that's going on with them. And so I do energy healing work as well, but I found that this somatic work healing is really special and it takes people to a place that they sometimes don't get when they're just working along the levels of the mind. You
Right.
know, I could read them over and over again and keep telling them like, "Hey, here's something in your childhood that's making you believe this. Can you let
Right.
go of that belief?" But the thing is, the belief isn't stored at just a mental level, it's stored in their body.
In the body.
And usually it's for a protective purpose. There was something that happened that they had to create this belief in order to, or create this pattern. The belief is optional, but the pattern they created based off of that belief was to try to protect themselves from what they thought was going to happen. And a lot of people, their conscious waking state mind, they could intellectually connect the dots, or they could hear me
Right.
read it and go, oh, okay, that would kind of make sense.
Right.
But their body's still going to hold on to it
Yeah.
in that protective way. And so somatics, it takes you out of the head, out of the mind, and into the body. And you guide people, or I guide people in the somatic healing to find the energy of whatever the blockage is, whether it's a symptom, an illness, or just a pattern that they're stuck in. And they track that sensation back to where it originated from. The first time that something shocking happened in their life. There was a big change, something unexpected. Maybe they felt isolated in that moment. Those are usually the conditions that would create an experience where you'd then form a belief, which then forms a pattern to defend yourself in some way. And so somatically, you go there. You know, those sensations guide you there. And in my thinking mind as an adult, with all the context and experience, I might think, oh no, I'm not beating myself up. I don't devalue myself. No, I think I'm great. But then you somatically go into it and it's like, oh no, in
Yeah.
my body, I do think I'm bad. I do think this or that. You know, it's
Right.
holding
There's
on
still that
to.
like inner 4 year old trapped in the
Yes,
space.
exactly.
Yeah.
Oftentimes somatics, that's what it is. It feels like talking to those parts of yourself or
Yeah.
to those child parts of you. And you bring awareness to it and you see why it was holding on, why it was protecting, and you kind of just update it. You give it new
Yeah.
information. You go, hey, we're not that age anymore. We don't need to hold
Yeah.
on to that. Or see how this, because you'll know this, but for people that don't, a lot of times this programming that's in us or these patterns that are in us, it's trying to create a certain result, right? So let's say
Yeah.
you have really bad stage fright. Maybe you had something in the past where you speaking on stage or in front of people, it felt like you were going to get embarrassed, and that meant you were going to be isolated alone. And at a body level, if you're alone, you have less of a chance of surviving, right? If
Right.
you're in a tribe, if you're thinking about just the biological sense. And so it was registered as a threat. Oh, I
Yeah.
go in public speak, I am at a risk of dying.
Rejection
Yeah.
bad.
Yep. Exactly. And
Yeah.
so you have to go back into it and show yourself that, oh, it's not bad. They're not gonna reject me. I'm not gonna end up alone. Maybe they weren't even rejecting me in the first place. That's just how
Right.
my kid psyche interpreted it.
You won't be
And so,
ostracized.
yeah.
and starve.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
One of the things that I think is a key to healing is forgiveness. And
absolutely.
not the type of forgiveness that says, "Oh, it's okay." Not the type of forgiveness that's justifying, but the type of forgiveness that shows you that what you thought was true about the past isn't.
Yeah.
So in that example, it's like, "Oh, maybe they weren't laughing at you, or maybe they didn't think you did something stupid. Maybe you go back into that memory and you realize only you were embarrassed
Yeah.
about it. Like you thought that
You
it was
were
that."
making up a whole story about it.
Uh-huh. And so you
Yeah.
forgive it. You change what it meant to you, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're bad and going to be isolated because you messed that up. No, it's just an experience. And
Yeah.
so you can somatically and intuitively do that. You can bring that forgiveness, you can change that perception, and then everything, instead of it being PTSD that's stored in the body, it's just neutral. It's just more experience. It
Yeah.
informs you in a different way. And oftentimes, when you go into those old beliefs and patterns and change them, you have a sense of being more authentic, being more you. You get to live in a new way. It just opens doors for you that would otherwise be closed. So, we're talking about it in a healing context, and it totally works that way. It works for symptoms, illnesses, all that stuff, but it also works for just being able to move forward in life with
Yeah.
relationships, with career steps, all of it, can
Right.
really
You get to
shift.
just be more of who you are rather than living through those fear filters, kind of the
Yeah.
holding back. When you were talking about, the if it's trapped in someone as this old memory of fear or trauma, it's like that part of them is in a cage, kind of. That part of them is holding back, for whatever the reason, but it relates to fear. And I see it as like that part of you, and that part of your energy, your creative capacity gets
Yeah.
freed and join you in present time
Hmm.
so that you can
Absolutely.
create. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, we're such powerfully creative beings.
Are
But it's a matter of where are we directing that creative power? Are
right.
we directing that power into all of these beliefs and mental images in our mind that limit us and hold us back and keep us in fear? Or are we channeling that creative energy into a vision of the life we want to live, or channeling that energy just into the truth of who we are and then getting to live that, express that in the world?
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, I think it's so true. I think so many people, because I remember living this way as well, we don't realize how creative we are because so much of that creative power is going into just maintaining a sense of safety, security, whether that's on a body level, an identity level, in relationship to the world and other people. And once we let go of the burden of that and the effort of maintaining that sense of safety, whether it's again on a physical or identity level, all that energy is freed up to really create on a higher level.
mhm.
Higher vibration of our creative capacity gets freed up. And it's not only super fun, but it's astonishing to see. I've seen that transformation in people. I've seen it in myself. I've seen it in others where from from one year to the next, even their lives completely transform because so much of their energy is freed up to
Oh
actually
yeah.
live their life rather than live in kind of fight or flight or just maintaining a certain level of what they thought they needed to be safe.
Absolutely.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
So, when you work with people, you do both readings and somatic healing. That's two different avenues of offering, and kind of one maybe follows the other.
Yeah, I think readings are really great for building awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and they can sometimes create really potent perception shifts too. But as you know, as a teacher, a big part of training intuitives is them practicing, them seeing it for themselves. And it's that reiteration of seeing it over and over again that helps them to make that perception shift. And
Right.
so for somebody who's not doing years of training where they're looking at people for themselves, developing the skill of being aware of patterns in general, somatics really helps them to at least be aware of the patterns within them, the patterns of their own psyche, and not just how their conscious mind works, but how the underlying subconscious mind works. And so I find it just to be a really integrated modality approach that just takes that healing a step further. Because for me, I've been doing intuitive work since I was, I think, like 16 years old. I think
That's
I was a
great.
sophomore in high school, maybe
Yeah.
somewhere around there. Um, and it's worked absolute wonders. But I also had, somewhat of a rough childhood in a lot of ways, which primed me to be prone to creating illnesses in the body. And so I've had these quote unquote chronic, incurable, sometimes mystery they didn't know autoimmune diseases.
Right.
And the energy work, the intuitive practices, they did an amazing job at downgrading my symptoms
Yeah.
so that they wouldn't be as intense. Basically, it follows the philosophy of everything is energy
Yeah.
and heal the spirit, and the spirit heals the body. And there's a lot of truth to that. That is how it works. But sometimes getting that healing that you've done in spirit into the body,
Yeah.
sometimes that's missed, in my opinion,
Yes.
in intuitive
Yeah.
work. And so the somatics, it helps that to be integrated, to really come in. Anyway, how I kind of got into it was um, like a year and a half ago. I was at the peak of my illnesses. They said I had mast cell activation syndrome, which is allegedly incurable. Of course, I don't believe that. I
I
had
don't either.
no, it's not true.
I've definitely
Uh,
heard of that and had friends that
yeah,
had a quite an intense healing journey getting through it, but did heal it. So,
yes, yeah. I've seen a
yeah.
lot of uncurable illnesses being cured, people
Yeah.
being healed in this last year. But at my peak of it, I was literally on a feeding tube diet because my body rejected every single food. So I had to drink this liquid enzymes that they put in feeding tubes, mix it in a cup
Wow.
of water and drink it because that's all I could handle. And I would
Yeah.
only have maybe 4 hours of energy a day to do anything. Like everything was shutting down because the I actually kind of asked for it in a way. Uh, it's a funny part of the story, but
Yeah.
I had sort of sent out a prayer or a request that I didn't want to just live downgrading my symptoms and kind of bouncing back and forth. I was like, I want to get to the root of it. I
Yeah.
want to truly heal, and not only truly heal, but understand healing in its full capacity. And so
Yeah.
what happens immediately after I get that sick, I get
You got some
forced to
answers.
have to deepen my understanding,
You
yeah,
got to
to
be
get that
thrown into
answer.
a deep healing journey.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
absolutely.
Wow. Yeah, it's one of those things people say, be careful what you ask for, right?
Yeah,
But you were ready
yeah,
for it. You have the capacity to move through that. And it looks
yeah.
like you have. So yeah, where are you at in that healing journey?
So well, with the food part, going from the feeding tube enzymes, with mast cell, they say that you can't eat anything with histamines, which is almost everything, but
Right?
there's specific foods that are a lot worse, and everybody's histamine reaction is different.
Yeah.
And they don't know why scientifically. I know why, I think. I like to think I know why. It's because people have different subconscious triggers to different foods,
Right.
right? There's all sorts of different activities and foods and etc. that can activate that histamine response, and then your body shuts down. But it's based off of your subconscious triggers, and it's based off of seeing the world as dangerous as a whole. And so I've been somatically working on it, and now I can eat pretty much every food besides gluten. I haven't quite cured that one yet, but I'm getting closer.
Well,
But
just about everybody has a gluten sensitivity now, it seems like.
Yes, yes, and they
That's
I'm a
fun.
celiac technically, so they say that's incurable too. But I'll let you know in 6 months once I cure it
Yeah.
that it's not true.
Hey, I mean,
Uh,
you might as well. Bread's fun. It's
yeah, yeah. Um,
that's amazing. I love that.
So where I'm at with the healing journey is I haven't fully, I call it resolving a conflict, because there's these
Yeah.
spiritual wounds, conflicts that your psyche and your brain are going, okay, I need to defend you from this situation, so I'm gonna have your body adapt in a way to protect you.
Yeah.
But since our psyche hasn't let it go, we're not in the dangerous situation anymore, but it's still holding on to it, so your body's still reacting based off of your brain's command, and it's creating that symptom or illness. And
Yeah.
so I had so many because I've had these various illnesses since I was like 14, 15 years old. And they're all so overlapping that there's a lot of threads to mine.
Yeah.
So I've resolved some of them, which is the word for having healed them. And some
Yeah.
of them I'm in the process of resolving. I'm in the process. So once you start healing it, once the conflict is over in your psyche, your body actually gets more symptoms at first.
Right.
It
It's like
goes into a healing
clearing.
phase.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm in the healing phase of most of them. So it's just finishing out. I'm just clearing the subconscious triggers in my environment and life that had kept them activated. Because if you re-trigger it, your body goes back into defense mode, and then in healing, and you just bounce back and forth. That's what chronic illness is when your
Right.
body's bouncing back and forth from danger to, okay, safety, danger, safety,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So yeah, they're all clearing up. Uh
Wonderful.
yeah, yeah,
And then,
getting
so
there.
you've worked with yourself in this somatic healing to clear these on that mental conflict.
Hmm.
It's even, is it deeper than the mental level, like the subconscious level
Yeah,
of conflict where the body goes into and the subconscious mind goes into fight or flight related
it's
to certain.
it's yeah, it's a little bit more than that. So it happens on the level of the psyche.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of call it a spiritual wound, because you, you you can't define what's trauma, right? For one
Yeah.
person, trauma could be one thing, and for another person, it could be totally different. Um, and so
We've all been traumatized. I always say we don't need to go into trauma competition. And there's certainly people who experience a trauma that everyone could say, yeah, that's intense, like
Sure.
really life threatening, physical types of traumas, intense accidents, intense
Mhm.
abuse, things like that. But yeah, when we're children, we're all so open and sensitive. So just having like someone forget to pick you up from school
Right.
can be
Exactly.
traumatic. And so yeah, I agree. We don't need to downplay the levels of
Exactly.
trauma. What lands as trauma to that psyche, in especially in young sensitive children, can be the simplest thing sometimes. It seems simple
Yes.
to an adult when it can land as
Yeah.
trauma to the child.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I remember one moment where my son like lost his mind because when I was dropping him off at his mom's house, he was asking if he could bring his water bottle, but he had brought like 5 water bottles to her house and never once brought any of them back. And so I was like,
Right.
you can't bring it. I'll never get any of your stuff back. Once it goes to her house, it's gone.
Yeah.
But I remember how upset he was. I was like,
Oh,
oh, I just created a trauma over a water bottle. I
you're
guess I
right.
should have just continued to buy them on infinite
They'll
loop,
just have to get another water bottle. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt really bad about it. But that's the thing is it's like, yes, you could definitively measure like, okay, this event is traumatic, but how it affects your brain and then how your body responds is completely unique to your own psyche's perception. And
Yeah.
so when you're really, really little, you start to form these identities of who you are, who is God, what is life, all these different core things come in. And in
Yeah.
those first like 7 years, a lot of that identity is based around your connection to your mother. It hasn't become its own separate individual identity yet. And
Yeah.
so that's when you're taking in all that information from the family, from your mother, all of that stuff and building it. And so by the time you're 7 years old, you have this kind of preconditioning beliefs built into you, right?
Yeah.
And so then you're riding your bike and you fall and you scrape your knee. One kid's psyche, based off of their preconditioning, is going to go, oh, that means I'm bad. I'm
Oh,
terrible because
yeah.
I failed.
Right.
Versus
I feel.
somebody else's psyche isn't going to perceive it that way. It's just like, oh, the bike is bad. This
Right.
bike attacked me, right?
It's the bike. Oh,
Yeah.
it's
And
the
so based
concrete.
on, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Or
It's
the
it's
world
mom's
isn't
fault,
safe.
dad's fault.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there could be a whole bunch
Yeah.
of different conclusions, right? That the mind
Yeah.
comes up with. The world is just inherently unsafe, right? That's another one that
Hmm.
could be another conclusion.
Yeah, it's a big one. It's a
Hmm.
big one. Yeah.
Or
And
I'm
so
never.
then how they perceive it, how the psyche perceives it, it registers simultaneously in the brain and in an organ level based
Yeah,
off of what it was being perceived as. And then that organ or that tissue layer, it starts to adapt based off of how the psyche and brain have created that relay. Yeah.
fascinating. So you see different types of beliefs or traumas held in different parts of the body or different
Yeah.
organs. Yeah,
Yeah, there's an exact map actually.
yeah,
There's a map that shows all of them with no deviations. The science on it is actually very accurate now
yeah.
for a lot of it. But one thing that's interesting too that you brought up in my mind is I'll give you an example of one that I worked on. I was having a dairy intolerance. I had had that dairy intolerance ever since I was in second grade. I'd get really constipated, really bad stomach pain, bloating, whatever. And I was doing some somatic inquiry into it, and I found a memory where I was in my friend's house as a little kid in first grade, and we were eating mac and cheese. Maybe we had a glass of milk too,
Right.
and somebody knocked on the door, and his big scary dogs that were in dog crates started barking and trying to get out. And
Yeah.
there was a part of me that thought they were going to get out and like eat me because they're
Yeah.
scary dogs. And so my brain took a screenshot of that moment and it
Yeah.
registered the dairy as being the danger.
Right. It like everything that was going on right at that moment was dangerous,
Hmm.
including that.
And
That's
so when I was able to find that memory and connect the dots, my dairy allergy went away. And I
amazing.
literally drink milk all day, every day now. I
That's
love it.
amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might seem like totally magical to people too, but it really getting down to that scientific level, it's very accurate and
Yeah.
precise. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you could read something like that for somebody potentially.
Yeah.
Getting the exact details of how their psyche interpreted though, you wouldn't be able to do because you're looking through the lens of your psyche. So even
Right.
if I perfectly read for you, hey, here's this moment in childhood, A, if it actually caused you, if it was a significant enough event to where it caused some, one of these um, conflicts to occur, it caused symptoms, A, your mind's going to protect you from it.
Right.
It's not going to want you to go there.
Yep.
And B, you even in your conscious mind wouldn't know how your little you interpreted that. So me reading it and telling you here's the memory, it might not do anything. But when you
Right.
somatically go back to that moment, you're listening to the body's communication.
Yeah.
Then your brain starts to go into the same trance state that you were in when you were in that moment as a kid. So it's kind of like self hypnosis,
Right.
but at a very light level. It's not scary or super deep. And
Yeah.
so then you can literally you then connect the dots and undo that memory at the same
Yeah.
brain waves in which it was created, and boom, then your body stops
Love
making that
it.
adaptation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a beautiful example of what I always tell people that, our body is in our mind.
Mm,
It's not the other way around,
yes.
but it's the very dense, heaviest, most intricate, complex part of the mind, right? This interweaving of all these
Hmm.
mental images and thoughts. And so, like you said, it's the starting point is maybe you reading it, right? Clairvoyantly reading, oh, I'm
Yeah.
seeing this picture of, when you were a child, you were eating macaroni and cheese and there was some dogs barking. But on that somatic level, bringing that into the body, into that part of the mind, because otherwise you're kind of seeing it from the part of the mind that's outside of the body. But then to
Hmm.
bring it into the body and see it from there, then you get to let go of whatever
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
however old you were at the time, however old you were at the time, you get to let go of those conclusions you drew about it
Hmm.
that manifest in the body. That's so fascinating.
Yeah, and
I
it's
love it.
kind of like here's an image I like to paint for it. It's kind of like if you imagine like here's your physical body, then
Yeah.
you have an emotional body, a
Yeah.
mental body, and a spiritual body. A body just being a word for kind of all the aspects of you that you experience, right? That's what a body is. It's a vessel to have a life experience through.
Yeah.
And so, the each bodies would just be a particular aspect of your overall human experience. So you could say spiritual healing, you're healing from the top down.
Right.
You're healing from the spiritual body. It's moving through the mental, emotional, and physical,
Yeah.
which is great. But it also works the other way, where you can go from the grossest, most dense form, the body. You could
Yeah.
just have a simple symptom, like maybe you're coming to me because you have eczema on your skin, and so you can start with that frame of reference in the body. But then as you move up through the energy bodies, you get to the level of, oh, this eczema rash or whatever it is, it's maybe a separation conflict. It's something that happened to you in the past that you wanted to separate from but you couldn't.
Yeah.
And oh, okay, you go a little bit beyond that, and what was it believed, what did you believe about yourself that made it so you couldn't separate from that person, or what did
Right.
it mean in that moment that you were not able to separate, right? So you
Right.
bring it back up through those mental levels
Yeah.
up to the spiritual again, and it brings you back to your true self. It brings you back to the
Yeah.
pure truth of who you are.
I
So
love
I
that.
just find it nice to be able to work top down and bottom up.
And bottom up.
Uh,
Yeah.
has a
Because
more
I feel like different directions, so to speak, might resonate with different people, right? Some people might easily and quickly go to that spiritual place first, and others, they want to start, let's just start in the body. What's going on
mm,
here? And from there, they create space to kind of look at it, going in the other direction up
yeah.
towards the
A-
spirit.
And
Yeah.
I think maybe the idea too is just to be integrated with it, because it's funny. I'll see people in the spiritual healing realm that eventually kind of migrate into some more of the body healing somatic stuff. And then I see people that started in the body level stuff
Yeah.
moving up into the spiritual teachings and things. So
Yeah.
in the end, it's all kind of comes full circle, and it's maybe
Yeah.
just about being integrated with it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like that idea of heal the spirit heals the body. And really what that means is the spirit doesn't need healing. The spirit's already whole and
Right.
perfect and
They bring
exactly as
forth
it needs to
spirit.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
it's being able to undo any of the mental overlays we've created over the body, our life,
Yeah.
and bringing it back to that wholeness of spirit that's
Absolutely.
already healed. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always the definition of healing that I come back to is healing is restoring wholeness.
Yeah.
And so if we're excluding spirit from the picture, there's not going to be true healing. But as you were demonstrating, you can't exclude the body either because that's where we're experiencing ourselves right
Hmm.
now. When you have a body, that's where the juice is, right? That's where the
Yeah.
kind of nuggets of healing are contained because the body is really, I see the body as the subconscious mind, right? An expression of
Hmm.
the part of our being that we have stored things in the subconscious. So, really, that's where the juice is. If we only address it at that higher level, we might be really not looking at what we don't want to look at.
Yes. Yes. That's the beauty
Really
of it.
easily avoiding that which we've already been avoiding for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And
That's
so it's
that's
really a gift when the body produces these symptoms. I mean, that's harder to say when we're in deep levels of pain. Like for me,
yeah.
I experience migraines sometimes. And if in the midst of a migraine, someone were to say to me, oh, it's just a certain set of pictures you need to blow, I'm like, that's great. But like right now,
Yeah.
I'm experiencing some deep pain. And I might, I think years ago, I might not have experienced a migraine as a gift. I would always look at it as a doorway into healing. Like there's some information here, right?
Mm,
There's definitely something within me trying to get my attention, right?
mm,
And looking at all the different levels of healing. But I do really see any kind of physical symptoms as a gift.
hmm.
Even if in the midst of deep pain that might seem annoying to hear.
Yeah.
It's
No, it
really
absolutely
getting our
is.
attention. It's saying, hello, there's some information here that you've been not wanting to look at. There's something that has been separate that's saying hello and wanting to be welcomed back into the wholeness of your awareness.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the most perfect mirror for anywhere where you're not whole and living in the oneness of spirit. It shows up within the body, whether that's a past event that happened that still needs forgiveness, whether that's a current belief that you're running. When you go into that subtle, dense experience of the symptoms, it can literally elevate you all the way back to the complete and total oneness of spirit.
Yeah.
Right. And it's kind of like, if we're born in our natural state, we're just in that sort of enlightened state, and then we build up all of these images of separation and being disconnected from that oneness and the wholeness of spirit. And then we have all that stuff that I was talking about, the preconditioning ideas and then the conflicts. Well, imagine if you were just always know that you were totally unconditionally loved, you were
Yeah.
experiencing the wholeness of spirit, then none of that stuff would matter, right? It's
Right.
kind of like when I had my first, I went to an enlightenment intensive when I was 16,
Wow.
and one of the interesting aspects of it was I had this horrific chronic neck pain
Wow.
that was constant since I was 14 years old. And I remember sitting there doing the process, and the neck pain was getting worse and worse and worse the closer that I got to a breakthrough. And
Right.
then right as I had that breakthrough, I had this enlightenment experience. So I was in the total, just oneness state,
Hmm.
and I had no neck pain. In fact,
Yeah.
I couldn't even see my body anymore. It
Right.
was just this body of light, and I was looking out in this whole interconnectedness.
Right.
And
Right.
so if we could just maintain that state all the time, we'd be good to go. Wouldn't matter what's
Right.
going on. But these symptoms, illnesses, or even the problems we create in our life, they all show us where there's blockages to living in that state all the time.
Yeah.
And so you get to inquire into it. You get to see what's going on in there. And in that healing, there is that transcendence. There is that enlightenment that comes through it too. So it's a
Absolutely.
fun process.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say wherever there's that, you could use the analogy of darkness, right? If you look at symptoms as like a clump of energy that is very compact, right? And there's a lot of layers of mental images, as we were talking about memories or past experiences in the psyche, and it's dense, right? And in that density, there's darkness. Just go into the darkness.
Mm. Bring the light to it.
It's not necessarily all of us, for all of us, it's not necessarily our first inclination. It's like, oh, don't go there. It
Hmm.
kind of naturally has that protective layer of resistance and avoidance. But then if it becomes a physical symptom, it gets louder and louder, right? Until it's like
Yeah.
you can't avoid it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's why, getting back to why I said symptoms are really gifts, they're getting our attention to say there's something here, there's some information that your soul is being guided to really look at, and open up that dark pocket and bring some light, the light of awareness into it, and just see what's there for you to
Mm.
discover about yourself, about maybe hidden past traumas, energy you're holding on to, what you're ready to forgive and let go of. And then that dark pocket kind of just, it unravels, it opens up. And then, like you said, there's a healing crisis in the sense that once that's opening up, there's layers of energy releasing, right? So, on a
Yeah.
physical symptom level, you might experience a little bit more intensity in your symptoms as that energy is coming out. But then on the other side of that, there's the conflict
Yeah.
resolution and the
You're
clear.
a new person. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's always worth
Yes.
it to look into those dark
Yeah.
pockets.
Yeah, it is. It can feel like it's not worth it when you're caught bouncing back and forth. When you start to have the big healing symptoms, but then you just go right back into conflict activity because it's not actually resolved. You
Right.
know, that's chronic illness, but
Yeah.
also people that
That can be
uh,
disheartening.
also people with
Urgent.
relationship patterns, career
Mhm.
patterns, where something keeps happening over and over again. It's a
Yeah.
similar thing where it hasn't actually been addressed and resolved. And a
Yeah.
lot of people get stuck trying to change something externally to make
Right.
their life better, but that's working on the effect. It's not going to ever matter because the cause has to change in order for
Yeah.
the effect in the world or the effect in your body to shift.
Right.
So if you don't address it at that level, nothing's going to happen. Like for example,
Yeah.
I had some conflicts with water, with fluidity.
Even
Um,
water.
well, yeah, let me explain.
Okay, I want to hear more.
So I had a big cut on my arm,
Hmm.
and it was stitched over and it was trying to heal. And
Yeah.
then I went to go be on a rafting trip, and they said, so you're rafting, but you're also days away from any public roads. Like
Right. Right.
it's out there, out there.
You're remote. Yeah.
Yeah, you like pack in the rafts, and so they're like, if this gets wet and gets infected, you'll die.
Oh my gosh.
And yep.
A little alarming.
So water's dangerous, right?
Right,
Going
right,
off in the
right.
brain. And sure enough, it did get wet. It did get infected.
I mean, on a raft, I
And
would imagine you're going to get wet.
yep. And it turned green and yellow and swelled up so much that it dislocated my wrist.
Oh my,
And the infection grew over top of the staples. So they had to emergency evac me and cut off that first layer of skin to get to the
oh my God.
staples. But here's the interesting part. So water conflict, right? Body registers fluidity is dangerous. What else
Yeah.
is a currency? Money.
Mm,
So my psyche was seeing money as dangerous in large amounts. And so I would make great money. I was doing really well in my career at the time, but
yeah.
then something crazy would happen. My car crashed the one day I didn't have insurance. My house
Wow.
leaked and
Yeah.
had mold that wasn't covered by insurance. It was like literally back to back 30 grand plus
Wow.
bills that were
Yeah.
not covered over and over again, tanking me.
Right.
And so until I actually addressed that fluidity conflict, that water conflict that was in there,
Yeah.
which I would have never known I had, except for the fact that it was creating certain symptoms in my body. And thanks to
Yeah.
knowing the map of what symptom correlates to what thing, I was
Yeah.
able to put it together and eventually find that memory and go,
That's
ah,
wild.
there it is.
I love that.
So,
Yeah, it's so wild what the associative mind can put together. Because on a conscious level, we would say, well, that doesn't seem to correlate.
right.
On an energy vibration level, money really is just movement of energy, right? The
Hmm.
flow of energy.
Yeah.
So I can
That's why
see
it's
where
called
that
a
would on a
currency.
subconscious level have an association. That's great that you found that.
Yeah. Yeah, our bodies are very literal.
Yeah.
They're very literal. Like I had a client today who was experiencing constipation and pain from it. And I go, well, yeah, there's this huge thing in your life that you feel like you can't digest. You can't move it forward.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we either got to change your perspective around that event or we got to move you past that moment in your life so that it will resolve.
Yeah.
And, just the awareness of it sometimes resolves it. The first time I had worked through him, just bringing awareness to that, it resolved. His constipation was gone the next day. Um,
Amazing.
I
Yeah.
saw, yeah. So it's pretty cool stuff.
And able to just let go. So you found on a mental level what he was holding on to, like not able to
Hmm.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is so literal.
Yeah, and it'll show up in people's language too.
Yeah.
If you're mindful of how someone's talking or you're mindful of your own thoughts,
Yeah.
like I woke up this morning and I was having a certain stomach pain, and I go, oh, okay, stomach pain relates to this territorial anger that I'm experiencing. And I was like, what was I thinking about? Oh, I was thinking about the neighbor's dog and the fact that it barks all day and night, and I'm gonna do this podcast, and this dog's
You
probably
got
gonna
some
bark.
dog
And
stuff.
so there's this, yeah. And so I made the mental connection and now my stomach
Yeah.
feels great. I'm like, oh, okay, phew. So
Yeah.
once you know the map, you know how to investigate that stuff. You
Yeah.
can just dissolve it. It's like magic.
Yeah. Letting go of some resistance to the perceived problem of dog barking.
Yes, that's
Amazing.
that's a big way to heal things too, is to not have resistance to them.
Yeah.
Because anything, back to the thing of trauma being subjective, it's like the only thing that makes it store as trauma in your body is your resistance to it. if you don't have any resistance to it, you don't make it mean anything about you. It's just an experience. Then it's just done. Your body might adapt temporarily in the moment, but as soon as it's done, it's done. Super small healing phase, and you're good to go. And
Yeah.
so that's the beautiful thing about the spiritual work that we do is it teaches people to have neutrality, to be in non-resistance.
Right. And to
Um,
recognize resistance. Because I think
mhm.
I remember a time when I didn't even realize how much resistance I was in, like really until
Yeah,
I learned to recognize that as a certain energy vibration and on a mental awareness level to see what that energy looked like. It wasn't until I recognized it that then it became amusing, like, wow, a lot of resistance. It starts to become amusing how much resistance we just on the daily, what's considered normal to just
yeah,
walk around in pretty high levels of resistance, really. And
yeah,
then we wonder why there's pain in the body, or, like you said, different symptoms related to different areas, depending on where that resistance has
yeah,
built up or become like taken on a life of its own, really.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's invaluable to me to learn to recognize that as an energy and that I didn't have to solve it in my body, right? Because even if we learn how to let go of our own resistance, we are walking around in a world that is full of resistance.
Mhm.
Just like the average person is living in a lot of resistance. It's just the world is full of resistance. So we might let go of our own resistance to things, but we're still encountering that energy. So
Yes.
then it's a kind of a game of not resisting the resistance, matching the resistance, taking it on, or as I was doing, trying to solve it in my body. I think a lot of
Yeah.
healers, that's kind of our default setting before we learn to heal ourselves, right? I always say, healer, heal thyself. Before we learn to heal ourselves, there's this default setting I've observed in myself and in a lot of healers of just trying to solve that energy that isn't at peace in the world, right? So whether it's conflict energy, resistance, effort, all these
Yeah.
different levels of pain, it's like it becomes our job to solve it.
Mhm.
That never
Yeah.
works, does it? That never works.
Nope.
And so, yeah, it's sort of we internalize it and then it just builds and builds and builds.
Yeah.
So for me, learning not only to discern what that energy was, but to recognize that even if I was letting go of my own, there was this whole, I was still going to be swimming in a soup of resistance in the world. So to be able to not only not create more resistance, but not become that energy that's out there. So like you
Hmm.
said, yeah, the tool of
Yeah.
neutrality, so important.
Yeah.
Just
Because
letting
it's
it be.
kind of like those mirrored neurons, right? That
Yeah,
phenomenon that they have in science of where people are mirroring their neurons. So if somebody's
yeah,
in a lot of resistance, if you're
match
looking
that.
if you're looking for anything from them or basing your existence relationally, which we all do,
Right,
then you have a higher chance of mirroring that and becoming that.
right.
So
Yeah,
learning how to separate from those sort of things, not become that, is really important.
yeah,
Also,
super.
the unconscious aspect of resistance too.
Yeah,
Sometimes you don't even notice it's there. Like one more fun
right.
personal example I can give you is my body was seeing doing well and succeeding is a threat to my survival in life because uh, uh, when I started to branch out to teach and do this work on my own,
Yeah.
I was sort of like ousted from a community for it because they were in competition and
Yeah.
all of
So
that with me. And
yeah.
so I saw that as, that's a threat to my survival if I'm doing well and moving forward in that way. And it showed up in a really crazy way. Um, when I was at work, if I would have a bunch of clients to go see back when
Mm.
I was doing construction management, I would feel horrendously sick.
Oh,
I would wake up and I'd be like, I have chronic pain, chronic fatigue. They thought I had long haul COVID, which doesn't exist, but anyway,
other topic.
another day.
Oh, that gives
And
me good ideas for you.
yeah, happy to go there.
Yeah.
But then the thing that I noticed was as soon as I would call my boss and be like, I'm so sick, I can't come in, like 30 minutes later, all the symptoms would alleviate because my body was going, oh, you're safe now.
Yeah.
And then when I started doing this work full time, same thing. I would be feeling fine. And then I would book out my whole week with clients or have a bunch of courses launch, and
Yeah.
my body would go sick. So it would go, oh, no, that's not
Um,
safe. Kind of in par with the fluidity thing, right? Because
yeah.
that's going to equate to money, but it was a slightly different variation of it, where it's like, oh, the competition isn't safe. If
Right.
someone's in competition with you, you got to get sick. And so that's one that I'm finishing up the healing of right now. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a juicy one. I have definitely been one to avoid conflict, especially competition. But that doesn't mean I'm not the effect of that competition. I might not be
Yeah.
matching it in terms of competing back. I've
Right.
liked that vibration, but I'm
Exactly.
becoming the effect of it by essentially hiding so that I don't elicit competition from people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally.
So yeah, when
Totally.
I discovered that, it was very freeing for sure. But it,
Yeah.
it took years of practice of both recognizing it when that would occur, when there would be a competition response from somebody, and I would notice, okay, am I hiding in order to try to assuage that for the other person or group, or can I just show up, right? I don't have to be afraid of that energy, and I also don't have to solve it
Yeah.
for the other
E-
person.
Exactly. Yeah, that was one of the ways that I started to resolve that one too, is I would imagine the people that were in competition with me, and I would just imagine me stepping back away from them and saying, "No, I'm not competing with anyone.
Yeah.
There's enough for everyone. I'm on my own path, and whether
Right.
they want to step out of that competition or not,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say no to that." And as I moved that away, my body was like, "Oh, okay, it's safe.
It's safe. It's
We can
it's,
keep
it's true. It,
working."
it registers as unsafe in the body because, well, competition comes from an idea that there's not enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's not
Mm-hmm.
enough, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that scarcity feels like survival to the body,
Yeah.
even if we're not talking about there's not enough food, there's
Mm-hmm.
not enough air to breathe, there's not enough water to drink. Just the concept of there's not enough, yeah, registers as unsafe
Yeah, and this
body.
would be too much to get into now, but there's different parts of the brain that govern different aspects of our evolution, right? Kind of like
Mhm.
how you have like the brain stem, or they'll
Right.
call it, what do they call it? Like the reptile brain.
Yeah.
They have these different, so it depends on where it registers in the brain, because if it's the part of the brain that was evolving within a pack, competition could mean fighting against the alpha,
Right.
and losing,
I want to do
could
that.
be detrimental. So yeah, there's all these ways to
Detrimental to the
see.
whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
there's that. Not only do I not want to compete because it is detrimental to my survival, but to my whole tribe or group
Yes.
or community.
Yeah. And so
Yeah,
what
fascinating.
symptom you have, it'll help you to know the nature of that conflict. Is it, with the alpha, is it territorial, or is it resource based? There's not
Mhm.
enough, based off of your symptom, it'll give you a map as to what that conflict is actually being held as for you. And then you have a greater
Fascinating.
chance of healing it, resolving it. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, you find those unconscious resistance that you have. Like that was
Yeah.
an unconscious resistance to me. I didn't know I was resisting doing well and succeeding. That would seem super silly.
Right. Right. Because
But
the conscious mind, that doesn't make sense.
yeah,
But subconsciously, there was that associative mind
yeah,
associating success with threatening the pack,
yeah, yeah.
threatening the alpha, yeah, and their
Yeah,
leadership perhaps or their direction.
exactly. And sometimes the thing that it actually is, someone will swear up and down that it's not. Like if you had
Right.
told me that I was in competition, I'd say, absolutely not. I'm
Right.
I'm
I don't
I'm
believe
bringing
that.
on
Yeah.
all my other friends to work for me. Like I'm giving away stuff to people.
Yeah.
No competition, but it was their competition with me, that was causing that effect. But I wouldn't have thought to look there, consider that, because in my mind, I'm not a competitive person like that.
Right.
So, that's why it's helpful to have these different things to
Yeah.
cue us in on
I have matching pictures, Brandon.
Great, great.
Yeah, no, I totally get that.
Uh,
Yeah, though I had that same aha when I discovered that same reaction. If somebody would point out, "Oh, that's competition," I'd be like, "Why? I don't. I've always shied away from competition." But that was exactly what the issue was the shying away, basically resisting that energy. I might not
mhm.
have been producing it
Yeah.
because consciously I know there's no lack or scarcity, but then I was still putting my creative energy into that resistance or fear of that, what effect it might have on me.
Yeah. There's
So
still a
somewhere there
story
was,
around the competition.
yeah,
Yeah.
there was still some scarcity related to how other people would I be, then we get back to the kicked out of the group. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Would I be ostracized or yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
not part of the whole if I stepped outside of that sort of
Totally.
agreement. Yeah, competition is a good one. I like to address that energy within people because as we're talking about it, it's not always something, it doesn't always look the way we think it does, right? It doesn't have to
Mm.
mean you're out there like kicking everybody out of the way.
Mm.
It doesn't always look aggressive. Like the word makes it sound like aggressive, but it can also just be avoidance.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is an important one to address because it directly negates your spiritual growth and progress because
Yeah.
competition only exists at the level of separation and there being a me versus you. And spirituality is all about coming back to oneness, the
Yeah.
wholeness of spirit, that eternal life. And so if
Yeah.
you're in competition, you're in your body level programming, you're in that separation, you're not moving back into that coherence of you as
Right.
spirit. So
Yeah.
it's an important one to address.
For sure. It's really just a direct invalidation of spirit, really, when we're
Yeah.
living from that place of competition and scarcity. And yeah, this brings me to the universal topic that comes up in a lot of these conversations is just this global shift that we're going through in humanity. I really see, and I don't know how long it will take to completely manifest and transform, but this greater shift we're going through is one from operating all of our systems as human societies operating from competition, and we're shifting more and more towards operating from what is more spirit-based cooperation, sharing, abundance, plenty, these kind of um, levels
Yeah.
of creating that aren't based on competition. I really see that we're in the beginning of that longer shift, and hopefully it'll manifest within our lifetime.
Mhm.
I'd
Yeah,
like to
yeah.
see what that looks like. I think it will be a lot of just greater ease for people in creating and just really validating that it's actually through cooperation rather than competition that we create abundance for all.
Hmm. Hmm. Totally. I mean, I almost look at humanity's state just to kind of pair it with the topic we were talking about. It's almost like right now is when we're in our healing phase
Yeah,
of the conflict. And
right.
there's a point in the healing phase called the epileptic crisis or epileptoid crisis.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's where you experience the fullness of the original symptoms like
It's
at its
all coming
peak.
out.
That's where someone's going to get, like, if you've ever had night sweats and you break a
Mm.
fever, something like that.
Hmm.
It's also the place where sometimes people die, if it was a
Right.
severe
Yep.
enough case. And I think humanity's almost to that epileptoid crisis.
Yeah.
But that's good.
Gonna
I
get
mean, I,
fun.
I think it's going to get more intense. It's going to hit the peak, but
Yeah.
then we'll be healed afterwards. We'll
Yeah.
go in a new direction. So,
Going through that healing
um,
crisis.
it's just important to use all the tools we have to be able to not be spiritually and psychologically destroyed through the changes in the
Yeah.
world outside of us.
Yeah, it's really
Um,
crucial to have that perspective of this is like a giant healing crisis. I
yeah,
use the words healing crisis, but I
yeah.
like your
No, that's what it
very
is.
specific
Yeah.
words. But it's that phase where we're letting go, so it's all coming out.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think what's uncomfortable for a lot of people is they might not realize that they ever wanted to let go. It might not feel
Yes.
like they have a choice about it. It's almost like, gotta let this all go now, so there's maybe
Yeah.
still a portion of humanity that's holding on for dear life, and but
Hmm. Well, and
they're changing.
that's what we do. And so it's the question of why are we holding on for dear life? What's the secondary purpose that we get for holding on to a thought system, belief,
Right,
pattern that's obviously damaging our lives? There's
right,
always a reason why we're holding on to it, and when we can see that, then you're actually able to let go of it. It's one
right,
thing to call out a pattern in someone, but to be able to help them discover the underlying reason why it's a
right.
pattern, why they're holding on to it when it's one that they can't let go of,
Yeah,
that's huge. And that's probably where we are in humanity, is in the somatic inquiry phase, where we're looking, because so many things are being brought to the surface right now,
right.
right? Where
All coming
everything's
out.
yeah, it's all coming out. Some of it's not even new. Like, a lot of people think it's new, horrific things, but it's like, no, it's just been things that were
Mm-mm.
in the shadow. It's
Right.
just new characters doing the same thing, but
Yeah.
some of it's with a lot more public transparency.
Right.
And there's a lot more to be revealed and come up
Yeah.
for people to see too. So we're kind of in the inquiry
The
phase.
inquiry.
We're starting to get the healing symptoms, we're inquiring, and pretty soon after we're going to hit that healing crisis.
Yes.
That's my prediction anyway.
But how, yeah, no, I think you're spot on. But how important it is to recognize that, right? So you don't get overwhelmed in the fear. I mean, would you
Yeah.
say that fear is the reason people do hold on, just really dig into any kind of
Yeah.
resistance or not let it
Yeah.
go? All right. So
Absolutely.
if if we can just address that fear within ourselves and not become the effect of the great unraveling,
Yes.
if we don't go into fear about it, then
Exactly.
it's just a pretty dramatic, some would say shit show, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but it
Yeah.
doesn't have to take us down with it, right? You don't have to become the effect of it and be swept away by the great unraveling or the big undoing or the
Mm-hmm.
great release. Coming up with all these different names for it. It can just be a daily opportunity to let go, to bring awareness to any fear,
Absolutely.
and yeah, and to just embrace it.
Yeah. It's your opportunity to undo where you're making the world real,
Yeah,
and everything in it. It's your opportunity to see it for what it really is, which is a mental projection,
yeah,
and to make your way back to your life and spirit.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, it's exciting. That's why it's easy to laugh because we know that. But if one doesn't know that, and when I say know it, it's like getting back to your original experience in working with people on a healing level. You can know something on that mental, like, well, yeah, that resonates as true for me. Like if we were, as we're saying to people now, oh, well, the world's not true or real, so you don't have to get swept away in all the drama that's happening. Even if that resonates on as true on some level, one really has to experience that, the reality of that on
Yeah.
that deeper, even somatic level.
Yeah.
And I think this is why meditation has been so important for me because I experience true reality when I am in
Mm.
meditation. I
Yeah.
experience the reality with a capital R, that which
Mm-hmm.
doesn't change, right?
Yeah.
And I might use the words the world isn't real because we've experienced what is real in terms of the unchanging, right?
Mm-hmm.
The infinite, unchanging beingness that has many words, and none of the words are really totally accurate.
Yeah.
But all the what we're pointing to with these words, when you really experience that deep within, even on that somatic level, then there is no more fear, right? You're able to recognize the fear and let it go. It doesn't have to be
Mm-hmm.
what controls your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's so
When
much
when you
joy.
know who you are and you can live it and bring it into the body, then there's no fear, there's no threat. You're
Yeah,
living as the spirit that you are, the truth of who you are, the
yeah,
unconflicted self.
The
Yeah.
unconflicted self. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where meditation can take you, like even my sharing of the enlightenment experience. That's kind of
Yeah.
like the peak of meditation for a lot of people. It,
Right.
it can take you there. And then it's okay. And then what about the body aspect of us? How can it meet that experience with us? And
And you
that's where
bring
we
that
do
with
the
you.
inner work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bringing that back into the body and having that experience. Just bringing that more integrated into your daily life, right? So
Hmm.
meditation it creates that space. I see it as creating that space within your mind to access that truth when you're not meditating as well. So that
Hmm.
you don't need to meditate, every moment of every day in order to experience that joy, but to really take it with you into your daily life just creates that space. For me,
Yeah.
it's total space to be
Yeah. Absolutely.
important. So helpful. Thank you for sharing with me all of your experiences. Do you have any more personal experiences with your own healing or with clients that relate to, especially right now, the fear so many people might be experiencing? Um, it seems like fear has reached an all-time high on the planet. Have you worked with anyone recently and seen some profound shifts in, where and how people are holding on to fear or processing fear?
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked with several people around that, and it kind of depends on what the fear is related to and what level it's at. Because some people, they're just looking at, the news too much, they're looking at the world too much, and they're dysregulating themselves based off of the literal fear images that are being put out there and all the
Right.
catastrophizing and this, that, the other.
Yeah.
And
Too
when
much doom
that's
scrolling.
Yeah, when that image is in your mind, it's
Yeah.
communicating that to your body, and then your body's going to respond and they get dysregulated. So for some of them, the shift is as simple as I'm like, stop looking at that.
Yeah.
Whereas for
Yeah.
another client, they were having a lot of fear around their business and if it was going to succeed and how it was going to move forward. And it would get so bad that they were trying to take all these different medications to calm their panic attacks
Oh, yeah.
because they couldn't even function in work. And it's like, okay, so that'll, medication is for people that don't want to change. It's for
Mm,
people that don't want to address the root cause. And I say that compassionately because, when you're really stuck with something, sometimes you do just need something to get you by in that moment.
yeah.
So no
Sometimes it's
judgment
like
at
a,
all.
a step to get yourself sorted.
Yeah.
Might still want to address the deeper level.
Yeah, and so for
Yeah.
that person, we had to go into, okay, what are these images that you're looking at, these triggers in your reality, and
Yeah.
what are you making them to mean? What's the deeper underlying fear with that?
Yeah.
And when we kind of go into that process, of where that fear is being stored, there may be a deeper memory, say for that person, like where their mom wasn't able to provide for them, and so they felt like they were in danger and had some bad childhood experiences with people because their mom wasn't looking out for them because she was trying to make ends meet,
Yeah.
and so that was linked to it, and it's like,
Yeah.
helping them to disconnect from that past memory and the extra charge that it put on the experience, and then what it meant about themselves if their business failed.
Mm,
There's all these different layers that we had to
so many
inquire
layers.
into
Right.
to
Right.
undo it. But then once we got there, it just dissipates. And,
Yeah.
a lot of people think that you heal the thing and then you just feel amazing forever and no fear. And sometimes you might get that, but for the most part,
Yeah.
you'll have it come up again, but then it's a choice. You
Yeah.
recognize the path of healing that you just went through and you go, oh, I'm going to choose something else. And
More
then in
space. Yeah.
yeah. And then in the living
Respond.
of the new truth, that's when it's like permanently healed. Even
Yeah.
then, it's not permanent because you can always change your mind. But that's when the patterns really shifted
Yeah.
and it's your go-to. Your
Right.
automatic is now the opposite instead of
Right.
your automatic being the fear and anxiety.
Right.
So yeah, I've worked with a lot of people around fear and anxiety.
Love that.
Uh, yeah.
Love that. Yeah. The healing really, I say the same thing. This doesn't mean that these kinds of pictures, I call them, or levels of energy won't ever come up again, right? It just means that if and when they do, you have more space to make a
Yeah.
decision about them to let them go, rather than being stuck in the reaction of just not even having a choice about it. It just
Mm-hmm.
takes over your whole awareness
Yeah.
and your whole body. And yeah, that he
Yeah.
creates the space and the ability to make a decision to let go rather than become it.
And that's why
Wonderful.
like working with people ongoingly can be really helpful because
Yeah.
you can help somebody navigate their own psyche, which otherwise they might be self-protecting themselves from finding the right thing. But
Yeah.
then after you do find the right thing and heal it, you can help them to then live that in the world and navigate it. Like I had a client who they would get really negative and even hit depressive episodes if they felt like they weren't going to succeed in life or get things done. And we
Right.
tracked it back to where, as a teenager, they felt really poorly about themselves and they thought that if they beat themselves up, kind of like a smack to the head, which
Yeah.
also mirrored earlier in childhood, that would get them to try to be better. But
Right.
what was happening is all these smacks to the head, all this invalidation, it was keeping them from having the confidence to actually move forward and create good things. And so
Yeah.
we went into that core experience, somatically released it, and then we had them look for anywhere where they would smack themselves in the head and have them
Interesting.
unsmack. And so they became
Yeah.
conscious of any
Mhm.
time that thought would go through, right?
Mhm.
And so they would have a choice. They go, "Oh, I don't want to feed that thought anymore. I'm gonna let it go."
Yeah.
And we can chat back and forth as I work with them to undo that. And so now they're healing and moving forward. And it kind of reminds me of, I think Joe Dispenza is the one that teaches that too, when he
Oh,
talks about like
interesting.
having
Mhm.
healed his back. I think what he said was he just didn't let any of a certain type of thought move through. He's like he was going to
Yeah.
stop it right as it entered
Yeah.
and rewrite the story. But you
Yeah.
can't just do that with willpower or
Yeah.
magic. You have to actually see what's compelling
Right.
the story.
Because there's a difference between, because if someone just said those words, you might interpret it as, okay, I have to like block that out. And that can translate to just resisting
Yeah.
those thoughts or that whole mental line
Yeah.
of thought. Whereas what Joe might have been saying without describing the deeper mechanism is he saw that, and then you really need to be neutral to it and let it go, not build up a wall of resistance to it, right?
Yeah, or
Yeah.
understand that it was like a natural biological response, but that
Mm,
it's not working anymore, or it didn't even
yeah.
work then, and so we no longer need it. When you
Yeah.
understand, then you don't become that person anymore that thinks
Right.
that way, right?
And then you can
It's
have compassion for where you were when you created that
yeah,
reaction
absolutely,
response. Like, oh, this served a
absolutely.
purpose, right? I can have compassion for myself where I was at when that was created. It served a purpose, and then recognize and bring it into present time. Like, okay, the purpose has been fulfilled.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
We can complete.
That's a great way to resolve it. Yep.
I
Yeah.
love
And
it.
you can make those mental connections then whenever it happens. Like, no, it was complete. We're not in that situation anymore. We
Yeah.
don't need that reminder anymore. We're not that age anymore, whatever it is.
Right.
Make the connection and go, no, I'm good. And then
All
you
done.
heal.
Complete, complete. Well, thank you so much, Brandon, for conversing with me today about healing. I love what you're doing. The work that you do in the world is so important. And yeah, I just celebrate what you're offering and all of the folks who experience healing through what you're offering. So thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you so much. It was so fun getting to be on here. It's such a joy to
Yay.
talk to you. Thanks for hanging
Yes,
out.
it's been a delight. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next time.